And then I'm going to go ahead and start the lecture by introducing our artists. First off, I want to thank all you guys for coming out tonight. As you may know, I'm the new educational kind of assistant over at the Regional Art Museum, helping with the programming and whatnot. So we're starting our new series this year, and it's called Explore Arkansas Art. Not only will we have art history and whatnot from Arkansas artists, we also have live Q&As and lectures with live artists, such as David Bailin here. And so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our artists, and then he's going to bring up his slideshow presentation. He's going to give a little lecture. We're going to open up the floor from questions from you guys. Sound like a plan? First off, let me go ahead and introduce David. He is basically from my view, he's about the second screen. David, if you want to go ahead and wave your hand and whatnot, there he is. There's the artist for tonight's lecture. He is a very accomplished Arkansas artist that works with like large-scale drawings, charcoal, mixed media, and very impressive stuff, very impressive resume. And of course, he will go into depth about that. Now, without further ado, David, I'm going to go ahead and head it over to you.
Okay.
I'd like to thank Ms. Duncan and Ms. Vaughn and Ram for inviting me tonight. What makes us artists? What drives us to spend hours in the studio? What brings us repeatedly to manic highs when, for instance, we complete a solid work or make a sale, get a good review, or depressive lows when we see our work in exhibition or come back to the studio to witness an aesthetic disaster? And why is it that after years of practice, patterns of work, approach, organization, deep themes appear over and over again? As a friend of mine observed, as artists, we really paint the same painting over and over again. While this lecture focuses on my work, my purpose today is to answer those questions about the artistic process. But first, let me reference an insight into the art object from the critic historian Meyer Shapiro via the artist Barnett Newman. In an attempt to explain abstract expressionism to the uninitiated viewing public, Shapiro observes, there is a difference between subject matter and object matter. The subject matter is the story or theme you want to express to the viewer. Object matter are the plastic elements used to convey the story or theme. The theme or story can be similar and still take on different forms. Once you understand the difference, you open your work to possibilities. You know what the real frustration of an artist working or walking into their studio? It is the realization that the artist can't escape the schema containing their mental model of the world, along with its epiphanies and tribulations. Those deep-seated structures we have created comprise our essence or core matter. The art production is a search through subject matter, manifested in object matter, for a link to that core of our existence. As much as we make progress in technical mastery, the core matter we try to tap into is elusive every time we pick up a brush, a piece of clay, or realize that the exhibition we have worked towards isn't an end to our compulsion to create. With these three concepts, core matter, subject matter, object matter, we can now move on to beginnings. My beginnings, to be specific. Two events shaped my belief about what a great work of art should be, and have remained a model to this day. Over 50 years ago, I saw a Bugs Bunny cartoon in which Bugs, dressed in an artist's smock and beret, and dipping a large brush into a bucket of paint, paints the Mona Lisa in 3 passes of his hand. This was an amazing thing to watch. I could never figure out how he did that as a child. Every time I lifted a brush, it appeared to be so limited. But later I realized what that joke really meant for the artist. Create the greatest amount of significance with the least amount of effort. You see it in masterful works. It only seems like the piece just appeared fully formed and effortless. For the artist, it means making every stroke, every manipulation have significance. While researching the work of the Mannerist painter Pontormo in Italy in the summer of 1975, I visited a convent. Walking into a dark cell from a long, sun-drenched corridor, it took a while for my eyes to adjust, and I noticed that I could only make out parts of a fresco. As I waited for the image to fully appear, I made out a crown of thorns, and then a stick, and a bloody gash. And then, to my astonishment, I realized that there was no complete image. The artist had created a painting that every nun could complete in her own special way. Fra Angelico had produced the most devotional piece of art I've ever seen. Both of these experiences came to define my approach to art and how object matter needed to be used. For me, that meant finding out what was extraneous to image making, discovering how far I could go towards developing a story without losing an image, mastery over materials so that process became pure muscle memory with no extraneous elements, poetry over prose, interstices that the viewer inhabits over the elements she views. Being 66, I have a long history of art making. I was looking over paintings I had made in 1976 for my BFA exhibition. Typical student works, attempting to make something original by negating everything I had learned about good painting, and combining 2 disparate styles, the grittiness of Clifford Still and the lyricism of Philip Guston. So during a period when conceptual art was king, I painted with my fingers, created visual diaries of my life, or as my wife puts it, contemplated my navel, and named my work with dumb titles. What strikes me now was how close those paintings looked and felt to my current thumbnails. The same self-enclosed stories, the diagrammatic elements of the work, and the space between each idea or impulse. This was an aesthetic epiphany. As artists, we change the subject matter, the story, and the object matter, the elements, but we can't change the core matter, the indescribable and intangible chemical, electrical, biological makeup of our psyche, the conglomeration of memories and emotions that require expression. We may never come to grasp or even understand what that core is, but it remains stubbornly fixed and reinforced throughout our lives. The frustration, therefore, is how important that core is to creating our subject matter and how insignificant our subject matter is to expressing it. The result of this frustration is the need, the compulsion to express the core through our works so well and so completely as never to have experienced it again. This was my mindset when I came to New York City. An anti-technique, anti-intellectual, anti-compositional aesthetic, where self-controlled, contained stories are piled up as blotches on the canvas. When I arrived in New York City in the 1970s, an artist wanting to tell stories was stuck with performance or theater or relegated to irrelevancy. I had to find a way to translate what I wanted to do in another form. In New York City, the blotches became separate stories segmented by spotlights focused on furniture and props placed on a large carpet that defined the performance space. A year later, the actions of my performances became individual collage elements. Each line of found text was linked with one found image with one cardboard sheet determining the final end of the collage and that story. And 1 year later, after that, the projection of that collage into a theatrical space. What appeared at the time to me to be a giant artistic leap was in fact just a similar subject matter translated into different object matter. On the left, the script. On the right, the theatrical translation of that script.
No. He misunderstood what she meant to say. That is to say that she took it as a signal of a return to old ways under a different setting.
I don't know if I'm coming or going.
You're becoming a parody of someone I already know.
Getting a good demonstration of what we knew all along.
On the left, 25 years later, a similar subject in a different medium. These works provided a way to form my subject matter, but didn't explain the continuity of the type of themes and stories I was telling. There was something deeper working on my art, a fundamental matter in my work that would never change regardless of the subject matter and the object matter. This core matter, ever present, would only be consciously realized with experiencing Buster Keaton and Franz Kafka's work. I was drawn into their work early on and found a deep connection to it. More importantly, Keaton and Kafka provided me with a visual and literary analog of what I was expressing consistently through my subject matter. These artists were a link to my core matter. Why this particular core matter is a mystery to me. I have read articles on neuroscience regarding creativity and vision, but as an artist, I'll leave the answer to neuroscientists and hope they never figure it out. But I'm sure growing up where and when I did had something to do with creating my core matter. In the early 1960s, Sioux Falls was a Midwestern city with a population of around 60,000 people, of which I was one of the approximately 500 Jews. I grew up hearing about the fights my father and his brother had during the 1930s with the children of the local German-American Bund. My grandfather owned several stores, called unfortunately the People's Store, that catered to those same Nazi sympathizers, and that saved a number of family farms during the Depression with his generosity and business acumen. But the time I was in school, there was none of that overt prejudice, only patronizing and ignorance about what being Jewish meant. My grandparents had moved to America to escape the pogroms in the Ukraine and Russia during the late 1890s and early 1900s. I had heard about the Cossacks and the pogroms, and of course, the Holocaust, and this probably more than anything else affected me. Knowing that the thin veneer of order, of society, of the contract between a people and its government could so easily be broken, occupied my work. Richard Foreman, an avant-garde playwright and director who I worked under, wrote that only by experiencing hysterical moments can we really know who we are. In many ways, the expression of my core matter seeks that visualization in my subject matter. In a sense, all the various series I've created have clear links to my core, the Keaton character trapped in a Kafkaesque situation. As such, the characters inhabiting my subject matter don't contain the proactive and defiant stance of Max Beckmann's modernist character, of which he says, "Nothing remains to him but protest, the only inner freedom, and with that one is to live." But the hapless postmodernist figure left only with persevering, no matter how absurd that action may be. The core requires an outlet by the artist. Its outlet resolves in subject matter, themes, ideas conveyed through the organization of object matter. When the connection between the core and subject matter is strong, the artist produces what he or she considers valid art. But when that connection is blocked or severed, the artist experiences the horrid and feared pit. These are a couple of the drawings I destroyed during a 2-year period beginning in 2010 while experiencing Resnick's pit.
Something peculiar about artists. They have ups and downs. You climb, you're on a plateau, and for a while, whatever you do is just wonderful, or you think it is, and then you slide down. If you're a good artist, you're going to go down. Then it's up to you, and pulling yourself up again is the most important part of your life. It's getting out of the bottom that you put everything into yourself. That's when you change yourself to be the artist that you will be. You always carry the memory of the bottom and fear of the bottom. And when you start going to the bottom, it's panic. There are people who can't stand the pain. What happens then is that they begin to develop some kind of technique to keep out of that hole. Once they do that, it's finished. They never go any further. They're done.
How do you know you are in a pit? You repeat yourself, recirculating old ideas without adding anything to the story, contriving ideas or stories that have no hook to them, or you create work without the blowback of creative engagement. We've all experienced it. After a period of incredible production, nothing. Completely frustrating, maddening, and gut-wrenching. And the most maddening and frustrating part of the pit is that you can tell when you are stepping into it, but can't do anything about it. I was in the pit for years, throwing out and destroying works left and right. But confronting the pit is the only answer to relinking the core matter with the subject matter, the only way to remain an artist, to avoid making wallpaper. Ironically, while I was dealing with the pit, trying to find my way back to a subject and my core, my father was dealing with Alzheimer's and slowly losing his. My constant erasing and remaking, searching for a hook, a subject that connected to my core, preoccupied me. While one of my early performances dealt with aphasia and the inability to communicate, and another attempted to reconstruct a lost relationship, I never considered how much memory plays in personality and the preservation and continuity of that personality in lived space. As an artist, the question is how to convey this without relying on visual cliches, such as foggy spaces, or translucent overlap, or collage, etc. Looking over the drawing failures during the pit gave me my visual and technical cues, the layers of partially rendered scenes and gestures that populated the skin of the paper, all the frustration of trying to define what was not yet formed, yet intimated by what went earlier. This back and forth process of drawing in and erasing out, from having an idea or image revealing itself one minute only to fall back into obscurity the next, mimicked what I saw happening to my father in his attempt to recognize in the moment his own personal narrative and memories. Shown here is the progress of a drawing called Podium, part of my last major series called Erasing. With this series, all the frustrations I experienced in the pit seemed to mimic my father's frustration experienced with his fading memory and personhood. I had found my way out. It also serves as a reminder that we make the same work over and over again. We cannot escape our core. Here is one of the erased, damaged, and destroyed drawings I made. And here we go back to my BFA exhibition. With my father's death, my erasing series came to an end as the drawings themselves became nearly completely erased. Ironically, I was invited into several abstract museum exhibitions. In a catalog from one, the art critic Peter Frank noticed this. On the face of it, he said, relying on a process of abstraction in order to approximate dementia does not sound like a vote of confidence in, much less advocacy for, abstraction per se. He does finally circle around and make the case for my inclusion in abstract shows nevertheless. Whatever subject matter or object matter we choose, as long as the compulsion to create art pushes us to express our core matter, we as artists will never be fully satisfied with our work. We will continue to face the pit and begrudgingly work ourselves out of it. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for David or?
So I would like to start off with some questions I have for you, David, and then we can open it up to everyone. I want to just kind of get the foot out there to make everyone a little bit less uneasy, right? So my first kind of question is, when did you kind of notice, what steps did you kind of take in your artistic career where you started noticing that you were getting more gallery exhibitions, you're maybe, depending on what kind of media you use, people were more interested in it. Maybe, you know, you started promoting yourself more through different avenues and you found your artistic career kind of going off from there. What decisions have you made in the past that you thought were very critical to your development?
I've made some really bad decisions.
Well, yeah.
I was there was a gallery in New York City, the Ron Feldman Gallery, that was cutting edge back in the 70s and 80s when I was in New York City, and I would bring my work to show him, and he was one of the few gallery owners that actually looked at slides. And I remember it was a rainy day. I traveled on a subway. I was wet and hot. And so when I walked into the gallery, I was dripping and steam was coming out of my place. And I showed him my work, and he said, he looked at it and said, you know, I really like it. I've looked at it for years now, but I think you're gonna have a dead end. And I just don't see any progress for you. This was in 78. 79. And, you know, I said, well, you know, he said it was just all mannerist work, which irritated me, you know, but it got me thinking about, well, what is it exactly that I'm doing? What do I need to do? And I decided to go back to my roots. I did a series of Holocaust drawings, trying to reconcile the events with the Kabbalah. And then did a series called The Midrash. And Townsend Wolfe asked me to have a solo show at the Art Center for their reopening. And those massive drawings, they were like 10 feet high by 20 feet long. They were life-size figures, and they dealt with biblical stories that bothered me. And I remember when I had, after I showed those, that a gallery owner from LA asked Townsend if he thought there was any realist painter or drawer that he'd recommend, and he recommended me to her. And she called up and said, you know, I really like your work, but you know, we can't show 10 feet by 20 feet drawings in our gallery. Would you make them smaller? And I said, no. And I mean, afterwards, I'm thinking, what a crazy thing to say. Luckily, 2 years later, she calls back, and I had decided at that time that I would be willing to go smaller. So at that point, I was doing 26-inch by 30-inch, went from these these massive drawings to very small drawings. And I had to change my style, but the one thing I didn't change was my signature. So I had these small drawings with the signature of my large paintings. And I got a call back from the gallery. I said, could you reduce your signature just a little bit so that we could, sell these? So, I've had a number of experiences with different galleries that required certain things of me. I always sort of think about them in relationship to what I'm doing, but I've never done anything for a particular gallery outside of what I normally do. So there's a gallery in Boston that asked me if I was interested in doing a series of glass etchings for a hotel, and it would be just all these doors, and I could do anything I wanted to in it. But at the time, I was working on a series, and decided not to do it. So there have been times where I could have made an impact in different markets, but decided not to. The gallery actually that I had in LA, I still have. So, they've when I started with them, it was the 26-inch small drawings, and then I worked up to doing 8x8 drawings. So now they take 8-foot by 8-foot drawings of mine. So
Good. So you kind of worked yourself up to those larger
Right.
materials, larger media. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and open up the questions to the audience. Anything that y'all guys want to ask about, maybe medium, different series, whatnot. He's all yours. Be sure to unmute yourself, by the way, or even ask a question in the chat, and I can talk to David from there if you're feeling a little shy.
It looks like you do a lot of charcoal. Is that what you do mostly?
Yeah, charcoal is my medium of choice. However, my current one of my current series is called the Fire series, and that was shown in unfortunately was shown right at the pandemic in Seattle. Let me I can show you the share. Let's see. Oh, I know what the problem is. Let me share. So here's the new site, the sort of the newest series, and they're basically pencil drawings on film with an acrylic and gouache background on a paper, and then they're sort of framed together. So there's a slight three-dimensionality to them, but these are the newest series. And of course, they still have that paranoia in there. There's a fellow running in the midst of all of this, almost sort of camouflaged. That was a series that I started after my father died, with the idea of creating a meditative approach, 13 by 19 inches. So they were very small. So I am working with color. I don't use it a lot. I use it mostly as a way of creating contrast. So that's,
what is drafting film? I have no idea what that is.
it's like a plastic paper. And what's really nice about it is it's translucent, but it holds pencil really well. You can manipulate the surface by using turpenoid. It'll kind of punch it up. You can draw into it with the turpenoid. It just basically changes the the brilliance of pencil. You can also paint on it, but I use the paper to paint.
That's interesting. I've never seen that before. Are you showing your work at RAM?
No, my work right now can be seen at M2 Gallery in Little Rock or in Seattle. But you're more than welcome to go to my website, which is bailinstudio.com, and take a look at what I've got.
Now, that doesn't mean that we won't show his work, you know.
I will hope that.
It's a couple of years out, so.
Yeah.
We got a question from Sharon in the chat.
Yep.
Have you worked with water-soluble graphite?
Yeah, I have. And water-soluble charcoal too. What I just happen to like charcoal. It leaves a, you can erase it, but it leaves a kind of stain on the canvas, on the paper, that really creates a nice pedimento to everything. So even though you draw on it and then you wipe it off, there's still that ghost in there. There's something about the charcoal that really relates to my process really well. You can, and when you erase the charcoal on paper, it changes it from a cool color to a warm color. So it almost looks like a coffee stain as you erase it. So charcoal is just an extraordinary medium. Graphite's fine, and I enjoy working on all of it, but charcoal is just my medium of choice.
So another question, which I really want you to delve into, just because I find it so fascinating. Where do you get your large sheets of paper, David? Tell them where you get your large sheets of paper.
Trade secret.
And just how unique that is, because it's really hard to find large paper, you guys.
Right.
Large drawing paper.
We have the most extraordinary gold mine with the Evergreen Paper Company in Pine Bluff. And it used to be International Paper Company. And they produce milk carton paper. And in producing milk carton paper, anything that touches milk products or any kind of food products has to be balanced pH. And when they get through with a run, they have what they call butt ends. And this is paper that's not enough to actually do a run with. So they stack it up and then they repulp it to go back into their system. Well, before they repulp it, institutions, not-for-profits, what have you, and sometimes artists like myself, can go down to Pine Bluff if you can get a hold of their manager. His name is Cowboy. He doesn't answer his phone all the time. He doesn't respond to messages. But if you get a hold of him, you have like this window of opportunity to go down to Pine Bluff and get these rolls free. I have a roll that I can't use anymore because I lost my big studio that is 10 feet wide. I have currently 8 foot wide unwaxed milk carton paper that's about 700 pounds that a friend of mine made a roll holder for me. And like I said, it's free as long as you can, get it up. And I was first introduced to it when I did a charity painting, and they got me this roll of 10 foot wide milk carton paper. I had a drawing that I was shipping to Los Angeles, and somebody came in and fell over on it, and it would have been crushed otherwise. But this paper is so strong that it just popped right back. It's amazing paper. And I've done everything that you've seen today was done on that paper. I have oil paintings that I did when I first arrived in Arkansas that had oil paint directly on this paper, and there has been no acid eating. I mean, nothing's, I mean, it's an extraordinary paper. So that's, you know, that's my secret. Go to Evergreen Paper Company in Pine Bluff, try to get a hold of Cowboy, or talk to Cowboy's assistant if you can, and pick this up. And they do give this to their you know, local school school district. So you just have to pick it up.
So it looks like, oh, I thought we had a raised hand from the audience. Okay, in that case, go ahead. Anyone else have any questions for David here? Now's the time.
I think Colin had a raised hand. Oh, so Colin just says to everyone, sounds like a drawing series.
Right?
Yeah, Colin also
hey everyone.
said I want my money back. Hey,
This is my name is Colin. And
hey, Colin.
hi, hey David. And I'd wanted to ask you about what you were doing now that you had erased all your drawings, but you answered that question by showing the new series. So it's fantastic.
Well, actually, I kind of, I really didn't answer the question, because right now I'm in a pit. So everything I do, I'm destroying. There is absolutely nothing that works. I thought I had something burning with a series that I thought I could call Ghost. But, you know, when I started the erasing series, I did have a feeling that the final piece would be a complete erasure and that I would erase myself. And that's exactly what happened.
Well, the new stuff you showed looks fantastic. So.
Oh, well, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. But it's so small.
Yeah, so small.
the one thing though, the one thing that I find not quite right about that work is that I'm still not using color in a way that, you know, like Sammy Peters, who's going to be on this show, uses it. I realized that there are certain questions I like to ask. What is this about? What can I remove to keep the story? What do I need? What don't I need? And questions about color add to the complexity that I just don't believe I need to deal with. And I felt I had found an answer to why color is irrelevant in neuroscience. In neuroscience, the eye or the brain basically sees first a monochrome, darks, lights, what have you. And that's where we get our information. Color adds expression, you know, emotions. But if you remove the value scale from the color, there's no information. So because I'm a narrative painter, because I'm a narrative artist, color is just some addition that I just don't need to deal with. However, I am trying to paint again, and I'm learning oil painting, and it's such a messy, ucky medium.
Right.
I have another question, if you don't mind. What do you put on your charcoal to preserve it?
I spray a UV clear fixative, but I'm always aware that every time I roll it, every time it ships, there's going to be a degradation in the surface, and so I've been notorious for going into exhibitions and redrawing. But, you know, I've never been caught. Although I was told once, I asked one of the curators, I think it was Ruth Pasquine, if I could, actually, no, it was Townsend Wolfe. He had bought an early painting of mine, and I just hated two of the faces that I had painted. Just thought they were just awful. And I said to him, I want to come in and repaint them. And he said, you can't, it's my painting now, you know? And so, you know, I think I need to write in my contracts that I have the right to change everything in my work.
Well, okay, I'll tell you what, I've been doing all year, I've been doing a lot of charcoal type drawings, and I've just been spraying hairspray on them.
Yeah.
Because then I paint over top of them anyway, but I do it to preserve it from if I painted on top of it, it would destroy the drawing.
Right.
Yeah, so anyway, that's what I've been using is just hairspray, so I'll try.
Yeah, the only problem with hairspray, I mean, I use that when I teach in class because it's not as deadly as regular fixative. The problem is that you're not getting the professional, you know, varnish or mix into it. Now, painting over it, your problem might be that there'd be sometime down the line a reaction to that hairspray. I'm not quite sure, but I would recommend an artist grade workable fix if you have the way of getting fresh air in. But certainly hairspray works fine. I just don't know if it's archival.
Yeah, okay, well, I'll check into that. But that's what I've just been doing that and then doing my oil paintings on top of it.
Yep. There was actually Max Beckman in his approach to painting would do pretty much the same thing, only he would develop his color scheme and his placement of figures first with pastel, so that he would get the colors right away. And then, as I understand it, he would paint directly into that pastel with his oil paint. It created, so he liked that kind of grittiness that pastel work. So you might want to think about adding, if you actually do color later, actually using pastel as a way of laying down your colors. You know, I mean, it's a way. The use of charcoal as a ground is very similar to the old masters' use of their first coating. You know, where they would make a ground, and then use, say, a sienna, raw sienna, or burnt sienna, and just do the lights and darks. Let that dry very loosely, and then place in much thicker paint. It's sort of the way Pearlstein works. So there's a number of ways to do that. I had a drawing that was a commission. A person had bought a work of mine and then wanted a companion piece. And it was the last commission I ever did. She said, okay, I want a seascape, and I want a beach, and I want Keanu Reeves in the painting. And I couldn't paint Keanu Reeves, I painted myself. And I used the charcoal base, fixed it, then used oil paint in washes to develop the color. And then she rejected it for some reason. She didn't want to see me in the picture. So I don't do commissions anymore.
Well, maybe you could give me some suggestions, because what I've been doing is I do my drawing and then I do the hairspray to keep it from smearing when I do the paint. Then I do an underpainting.
Yeah.
And then I've been doing transparent paintings, layers on top of it.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. The rule of thumb is thin to thick. You know.
Anyway, any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, any of you, I mean, if you'd like, you could just send me some pictures and I can take a look at them. Be happy.
Oh, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had a drawing in the erasing series that was, I had placed a gesso over an old drawing of mine, forgetting that part of the drawing had oil paint on it. And I was drawing, and it was creating some of the most incredible effects, because as my charcoal went over the gesso, the gesso came off. So I was getting all this really wonderful background, right? Oil, you don't put acrylic over oil paint. And that drawing sold, and I had to sign a release saying that they understood that this painting was going to rot, was going to fall off the picture. So you may not want to take my technical facilities to heart. You may want to check them before you let me know.
Thank you.
Hey, Lois, saw that your hand was up earlier. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question.
No,
You made a comment and I missed the essence of it. It was only by experiencing blank can we find our core. Could you tell me what that was and maybe elaborate on it a little bit, finding your core?
Please. Resnick talks about the pit as a result of an artist having gotten to a kind of plateau in their work. So you're working and it's just going really well. All the pieces are just functioning perfectly. And then you realize that you've gotten into a kind of repetition and you fall into what they call an aesthetic pit. And that is where nothing you do works. Resnick says that the problem is that artists that have experienced that pit, that failure of materials and subject, sometimes create tricks to make themselves not go into the pit. And he warns us that if you don't experience the pit and take yourself out of the pit by just brute force, that you'll never proceed as an artist. You're dead as an artist. So unless you experience that pit and have clawed yourself out of it by just working the materials and just being in the studio and just going with it, you'll never proceed as an artist. So it's a kind of an understanding about process.
Okay. What was the word you used though? I missed it. Only by experiencing, and there was a word blank. I don't remember. I didn't get it written down.
I don't know, because I'm gonna place this lecture on my website as it should be, and maybe it'll come up again. And if I remember it,
we will also have this recorded and we'll put it on YouTube as well, the Regional Art Museum. So that is something to keep in mind as well. And whenever we do, Lois, I have your personal information. I'll go ahead and send it your way. How about that?
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Somebody had asked about similarities with William Kittredge. And I have a story about that. My first LA show was the same time that William Kittredge had his first LA show. And in my opening, a couple of old ladies came up to me and said, "Your work reminds me of William Kittredge." And I said, "I do it better." And they said, "You think?"
Yay.
There was also, do you have a favorite drawing book you might recommend? Art history books. I have a procedure that I use in my basic drawing course that I feel is the perfect drawing course. It begins with 5 doodles that you must do. And so I'm going to let you in on the secret here. Let me show you. There are 5 basic doodles. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see. Here. Let's see. Nope, not that one. Okay. The 5 basic doodles. These doodles you see in every old master drawing, and they are the fundamentals of all drawing practice. So the first one is draw a perfect circle. All right. Just make bubbles on your paper. The idea here is that you should be able to have muscle memory to create cylinders, to create ovals, without having to kind of hack your way around the image, okay? So circles. And it needs to start at one place and go right back to the same place. The next doodle that you need to do is what I call the daisy. And it's based on the circle. So you start in the middle of a circle, you know, this imaginary circle, and you move out, and then you go back to that point and then move a little bit. It's sort of like a spirogram. But you create a daisy where the inside is a perfect dot and the outside is a perfect circle, all right? The next one is called the ball of string. And instead of going from inside the circle out, you go from the outside of the circle to the other side of the circle and then rotate. So that the inside of this drawing is a circle and the outside is a circle, all right? So there are the three sort of oval ellipses that you need to get to know by muscle memory: the circle, the ball of string, and the daisy. Then the next two are fundamental for shading. The first one is the hatch. We all know about the hatch. Only in my system, or my way of doing it is, you start at one point, end at another point, move, start at that same point down, and go to that same point down at the bottom. And each hatch you make has to be the same distance apart, okay? And you create a diamond, all right? So that's the hatch. And we know from looking at Leonardo da Vinci's drawings that the hatch that's where the distances come so close they're imperceptible creates a shade. And he is able to create a gorgeous face just with a series of parallel lines going from one side to the other. The last is the crosshatch, which again is a fundamental for shading. But in that, you do the same thing you did before on the hatch, but you repeat that on the other side with the same distance so that the crossing is a perfect diamond and the outside is a perfect diamond. Those are the 5 fundamentals. And I can show you all the sketchbooks by Leonardo da Vinci or by Michelangelo, and you can see each one of them in it. Van Gogh, I mean, you know, these are fundamental. I guarantee if you get those down to a muscle memory, you can do anything you need.
And you have that on your website, don't you, David?
Yeah, I have a number of my lectures on my website. I also have a student section that's has a lot of great resources. That's locked, but if you ask me to it, I will unlock it for you. And you can see a lot of these lectures as well as how to do figure drawing, foreshortening, all that kind of stuff.
I'm interested in that. I'm teaching intro to drawing
virtually great
now. Yeah, that would be great.
For years I've wanted to do a basic drawing book, but you know, I've never found one that really works. But this thing I think works pretty well because it goes from the simple line drawing to color concepts. And I know I'm teaching color. How can I do that? But you know, do as I say, not as I do. But yeah, just get in touch with me and I'll give you the I'm
going to go ahead and put David's email in the chat here. And it should be David at Bailin Studio, right?
Yeah.
David,
it should be David at bailinstudio.com.
Oh, okay.
That's my email.
That's
but
right.
You can also go on site and that's just bailinstudio.com. And you should be able to see a lot of stuff. Also a series of failed drawings and studies and destroyed drawings, which I think are most interesting. A lot of them I wish I had saved. Warren Criswell, who just became the Arkansas Artist of the Year for this year, mentioned that one of them he felt was what he considered to be a masterpiece. And of course I destroyed that one, you know. You just can't get into art history.
All right. Any more questions? We do. Let's see if we've missed any in chat here. Remy, You had your hand up. You have a question for David? That was quite a while ago, though.
Yeah, there she is.
Okay. All right. So that's David's email there, and if y'all guys would like, make sure I spelled that right, Bailin, if you can.
Yep.
All right. So, yeah, and then of course there's David's website, so y'all guys can copy and paste that, put it in your notes, write it down. I've visited the website myself many of times. It's got a lot of great information, and of course, if you want to learn anything about David Bailin's series, he has all of his series that he's done. My favorite has to be the erasing, and he left a paper trail. And so that has a lot of that drawing knowledge that you were talking about, as well as the erasing has more of the conceptual kind of, I would have to say that the erasing, if you really want to know what an artist statement, a good artist statement, you got to check out the erasing series and check out that artist statement for that one. It's a good example of a conceptual as well as formative approach to an artist statement.
Just one little note. My opening of that series was in Little Rock at Boswell Moran. And the day that show opened, my father died. So it just concluded everything with that. So just a note.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you might have said something about that actually in the thing at the website itself. I might have read that, or you had that show, that exhibition, and you had mentioned that.
Yeah, I seem to have bad luck with all my solo shows recently, because the Seattle show was opening in March last year, and they closed down the exhibition. So, it's like, just don't call it a solo show and then we'll be okay.
All right. Now, if we don't have any last minute questions or anything of that nature, I'll give y'all guys a last round. Do we have any hands? Okay, well, in that case, that was artist David Bailin. Don't forget to copy down those that information in the chat there. And of course, if Sharon, yes?
No, she's just clapping.
Oh, okay, I see. I don't know, for some reason I thought that was right. Okay, so basically, thank you guys all for coming tonight and kind of attending the lecture. All of y'all guys had really interesting questions. And you, of course, David, I'll answer them very well. And I just want to extend my gratitude to you all. And please be sure to kind of look at what we have for the series coming up. We have Marjorie Williams Smith, we have Sammy Peters, as well as some historical artists as well. That's going to be more of a lecture type that you're used to if you've come to the Rams lectures in the past. Yep, I thank you all so much. And I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting here. And thank you again, David.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.